Hannah and Cailin, back again with Double Talk. I'm Hannah.
And I'm Cailin.
We've seen time and time again films with a focus on just how brilliant, charming, and wicked is American serial killer Ted Bundy, but filmmaker Amber Sealey had a different angle altogether in mind for her take on one of the most infamous and well-documented figures in history. No Man of God dives into Bundy's strange and complicated relationship with FBI agent Bill Hagmaier during Bundy's final years on death row, with a chilling performance by Luke Kirby as Bundy and Elijah Wood as Special Agent Hagmaier, who develops a genuine friendship with the twisted killer. Listen in as we chat with Amber about what was going through Hagmaier's mind as the relationship unfolded, the manipulation happening on both sides, and why Hagmaier is the true man of God that Bundy aspires to be. We watch a lot of police interrogations, and this isn't a police interrogation, but it's very similar in the sense that it's this special agent who's trying to get Bundy to open up and be honest with him. And when you're watching police interrogations, you notice right away that they all kind of have the same persona, the detectives. They're cheerful, they're jovial, they're offering coffee. And right away, I noticed that Hagmaier is just not that guy. I mean, he seems frustrated when he's talking to him. You kind of see this uneasiness in his eyes, especially at the beginning. During that first conversation with Bundy, what do you think he was thinking? Was Bundy what he expected?
That was the beginning of his career as a profiler, right? And so he definitely was nervous, unsure of what to expect. He'd heard all these rumors about Bundy, how Bundy hated the FBI, hated being interviewed, so Bill kind of definitely went in there with a lot of expectations. But I think what you picked up on about Bill being different from maybe normal investigators is really true. Bill was such a good profiler, and part of that was that he really approached his subjects from a place of not from a place of judgment. He came at it with a lot of openness and a lot of, freedom to kind of make choices in the room about how he was going to behave and what he was going to do. And he had a really wonderful ability to be just very open and very present, and share a lot about his own life with, the people that he was interviewing. And I think his ability to be that open is what attracted Bundy to him, because Bundy was like, well, this guy's different. He's going to tell me stuff about his own life, and we're going to actually form a real connection here. And I think Bill was smart enough to know that that's what Bundy wanted. Bundy was going to, if Bundy was going to open up and confess, the way he was going to do it was if Bill really offered something of himself as well. And so they did forge a real friendship. I think Bundy certainly thought Bill was his best friend. Bill would not have said that Bundy was his best friend, but he did say that there was a real friendship there. There was a love there in a sense, and they were close. Bill also said that he should have been executed earlier, but that's not to say that they didn't bond in a real meaningful way.
Obviously, they both have a motive. Bundy's trying to convince him, at first at least, that he's innocent, and then Bill is trying to get information and trying to get him to confess and trying to understand what happened through his eyes and why it happened. How much of that relationship, though, even behind the friendship, do you think was based in manipulation because of their own motives?
They both were definitely performing for each other. And they both, as you said, had these ulterior motives or motivations. They both wanted something from the other one. And that was just an inherent part of their relationship. Like, it wasn't going to go away. I think in some ways they acknowledged that, too, in the way that they talk, or kind of maybe subconsciously would look at each other. They knew that they both wanted something from the other one. And they both were having to sort of outmaneuver. I think in the end, Bill won. Bill got what he wanted, and Bundy didn't. Bundy wanted his execution to be stayed. He wanted Bill to step in and say, we got to keep this guy alive. And Bill wasn't willing to do that. But so Bill got his confession, and Bundy did not get what he wanted. But, one could even argue, like, so many relationships have that transactional, thing where you want something from them and they want something from you. And that's so much of what I loved about, their relationship and their conversations was it, watching that sword play between the two of them and how they're each going to try to get the upper hand, to me was really fascinating. And as you say, it was a part of the Bundy story that not many people knew about. Bill Hagmaier was such an important relationship for Bundy. And in Bundy also was an important role in Hagmaier's life, because of his skills as a profiler with Bundy. So many other serial killers then requested to work with Bill, and Bill went on to have a really successful career, in some part due to working so well with Bundy. So they both were important to each other in different ways. They both certainly toyed with each other in different ways. But yeah, that's kind of just what I thought was really fascinating about the relationship, was that there were always these, while there were the transactions and the objectives that they each had, there also was a love and a connection that got forged.
Right on day one, that part where he was talking about what happened to his father, Bill was talking about what happened to his father, that was so early on that I was like, was that real already? Was that a real Bill wanting to share that part of him already right from day one? Was it like Bundy somehow made him feel comfortable to do that right off the bat? Because that just seemed insane to me.
That's really just who Bill is. Bill is a really open guy, and he's a chatty guy. And I think, as I said, I think he had researched Bundy, he had researched Bundy enough to know. And he, like we showed in the movie where he writes like Mr. Bundy, and then he scratches it off and he writes Dear T. He knew that Bundy wanted intimacy with people, and he wanted to feel like he's special and like a real connection. So he was just smart enough to know, like, I'm going to have to open up to this guy. I'm going to have to tell him personal things about my life, whether I like it or not. And that's the way that I'm going to get through to him. And so that's what he did. But I also think Bill's just a chatty guy and he's an open guy. And I think that's part of what made Bundy like him and made him want, most interviewers or investigators are real just like, no, you're going to talk and I'm going to listen. I ask the questions here, and the fact that Bill wasn't like that, the fact that Bill was like open and leaned in and was like, hey, tell me about yourself. I'll tell you about myself. That's appealing when anyone does that, and that's part of Bill's natural charm. When I talk to him on the phone, he tells me so much. He's so sweet. And I was like, I can see why Bundy wanted to open up to you. You seem, he's a warm, inviting person.
Speaking of your conversations with him personally, I was wondering how much of those conversations were taken directly from a transcript.
So those recorded conversations, Bill Hagmaier, he has those and he gave them to us. So he gave them to the writer first, and the writer listened to them all, and all the producers, and we all listened to them. Luke listened to them. So those are real recorded conversations that, that Bill and Bundy had together. And yeah, a lot of that is just verbatim what they said. Obviously, things have to they would sit down for 3 or 4 hours at a time and talk. And so, the writer had to pick and choose, but the stuff, almost everything that's in there is stuff that they said in those interviews or Bill said that they had talked about. There's some stuff that we took artistic license on, certainly, but most of it is real stuff that either we heard on the recordings or that we interpreted based on conversations that we had with Bill.
Right off the bat, the title No Man of God drew me in because, I don't know if you'll agree, but I feel like the movie is more about Bill than Bundy, and I think it's clear why that phrase relates to Bundy, but how does that phrase No Man of God relate to Bill? I'm wondering if it was his internal struggle, like, why am I enjoying hanging out with Bundy, or that's just how I felt about it, but I'm wondering how you feel about how that phrase relates to Bill and their relationship and just the whole movie in general.
I love that you asked that question. We thought a lot about the title because we thought about changing it a lot because No Man of God does refer to Bundy. And as you say, the movie is more about Bill than it is about Bundy. And I didn't want people to think that we were saying Bill was not a man of God, because Bill really is a man of God. He's a very religious person and his religion is very important to him. And it's really what gets him through his work. He's retired now, but it is a guiding principle in his life. And I in no way wanted to disparage that or be implying that Bill was not a man of God. He very much is a man of God. So the title definitely refers to Bundy. And Bundy's struggle with, because Bundy was raised religious. And there's an expression that says there are no atheists on death row. Apparently, when you get on death row at the end, you just like desperately want to believe in God because you want redemption and you want to apologize and then get to go into heaven. And so that's very much where Bundy was at. He was like, I want to get to heaven. I want to, so I think he was desperately trying to become a man of God and trying to believe, but I don't think he really did. And I don't think that, I don't think there was redemption or salvation, if that exists. I personally am not a religious person. So, so I was kind of in the middle of being like, I am not a God believer. I'm more of a kind of spiritual, like I believe in an energy between human beings. There's love, that exists. So I kind of like portraying being, having both of those different viewpoints exist in the movie, and in a sense, Carolyn Lieberman, her characters, she sort of represents more what I feel, when she says God is what gets you through this, for her, it's just about, she's against the death penalty. She doesn't think anyone should kill anyone else, no matter what the circumstances, and then Bill, is a person who believes deeply in God, but also believes in the death penalty. And then Bundy is someone who wants to believe in God, but just absolutely, can't find it. He's not a person of God. He's not a person of faith, even as much as he wants to be. So yeah, so certainly Bill is the protagonist, but the title refers to Bundy.
That scene towards the end where Bundy is finally confessing in great detail to one of his crimes. I mean, it's a very intense scene in the movie. You have Bill mouthing the words that he's saying, and I mean, you can tell he's like freaking out. He looks like he's gonna pass out, and it was such a great scene. But it bothers me because we were talking about it. We couldn't figure out what exactly was that realization he was coming to in that moment.
The way I was trying to approach it was like almost a sort of a meta way of like, if we just have Bundy talking to camera and saying all those horrible things, then the onus becomes on the women in the audience and the men in the audience as well, but the women in the audience to experience that, to hear these horrible things that this person is saying that they did to women. And I just sort of thought, why are we putting the pressure on the women in the audience, or for lack of the victims, I guess, to experience all of that pain and the pain of having to hear it over again. And so I just decided I wanted Bill to be a kind of surrogate for that. Because first of all, I thought it's got to be awful to sit opposite somebody telling you those horrible things, right? Man or woman, like if you're sitting opposite, they're holding your hands, your wrists, and they're telling you how they raped and killed women. It's got to be painful. So I wanted a kind of physical manifestation of what Bill was feeling on the inside, and also for it to be a kind of surrogate for us, for women who know what it's like to walk down a dark street and hear footsteps behind you and get really scared. I wanted the pressure to be taken off of our shoulders of feeling that fear. And I wanted Bill to kind of experience that fear for us. Outside, Bill wasn't really crying. He's just sitting and listening and doing a good job at his job. But inside, I wanted to show the kind of trauma of what it is to have to hear that kind of thing. And so that's why I had him, saying some of the lines and crying. And, he's really tangibly feeling what it is that he's hearing.
To me, the film kind of felt like a legend origin story for Bill. What are we to make of Bundy after watching the movie?
It was important to me that we portray Bundy as I see him. I see him as really narcissistic. Yes, he's a psychopath also, right? There's definitely something wrong with his brain, but he's also just almost like an incel guy that we have now. He's really narcissistic. He's really insecure. He's desperate to please. He wants everyone to think he's like the smartest guy in the room. And I just didn't see him as that smart. I mean, he's average smart, but he's not some, to me, he's not the rock star genius that I think he gets written about. I just see this like really kind of insecure guy. So that's, who I wanted to portray. So to me, it was about portraying really like the truth of who he was. That's what I was after, the truth.